Thank you, Isabelle Ferreras, for being here with us tonight. I think a very poignant column by our columnist Case. He pointed out that democracy and freedom do not work for us all in the current system. Tonight, I'd like to focus on two fundamental pillars of a modern life: work and housing. And first, of course, I'd like to explore the workplace with you, Ms. Ferreras. In an essay you wrote in 2019 called Democratizing Firms, you state that leaving the government of firms to capital investors is certainly unreasonable, illegitimate and highly unintelligent. Given the gravity of our current circumstances, labor investors must be brought to the table and put in a position to seriously weigh on the firm's strategies. Why are firms in such a need for democratization, as you mentioned, Ms. Ferreras?
What a great question. Well, first, thank you very much for having me on your program. It seems to be a fantastic program, and I feel very happy to be able to contribute to this collective thinking. The question you raise is obviously at the crux of things today. I think we have all seen and recognized in this pandemic that workers are essential, and even those workers whom we did not recognize, certainly not as essential earlier, and that we considered as occupying very low-skilled occupations, as checkout clerks, garbage grabber, or delivery people. And the thinking here is to recognize that these workers, as obviously those to whom we recognize even more skill, as doctors or lawyers or whoever is working, are actually the human possibility for the economy to exist. And so the important point here is just a very factual understanding that there is no economy, there is no firm without what indeed can be called labor investors. People invest not their money, they invest what's even more important. They invest their person, they invest their body, their mental health, but even their physical health, as we are seeing today in this pandemic, in their work. And even though that investment is massive, it's central, is absolutely crucial for any firm to exist, for any service to be produced or any production to exist, yet workers are left out of the government of the firms to which they contribute. And that is actually, yes, unjust and inefficient.
So what should we do about that?
So because Natasha referred to that op-ed that was extremely popular among the scientific community, an op-ed that we wrote with my colleague Julie Batilana at Harvard and Dominique Méda at Paris Dauphine, and that we really wrote to just try to contribute to our public conversation in order to try to help societies basically get the knowledge about what's going on in this pandemic, or what are the lessons that we could learn. That op-ed circulated to our closest female collaborators first, who signed it, and in 2 weeks, so many of our fellow scientists among the global scientific community actually signed that op-ed. And we affirm a basic principle, which is that workers should actually be able to validate collectively the decisions that apply to them. And that is a philosophical principle that you can tie to the existence of collective bargaining, which was at the turn of the 20th century a huge victory for workers, so that they could affirm their own needs, their own views about what their work should serve, how should they be compensated, all the issues that concern their work life. And indeed, we have to ask ourselves today, how can we deepen that principle in the context of the firm? And I've been working on in that area, and I've been learning a lot from the history of political bicameralism, because what I think is the problem of the firm today is a problem that we know very well in the history of democracy, which is the problem of the despotism of what is actually a minority, but which is generally made of those who own the means, so the property owners. And the history of bicameralism is in the history of democracy, the history of political entities which were faced with the growing demands by the other constituency, if you want, the constituency of those who were the essential contributors to the entity, as in Rome in the 5th century before Christ. As in Rome was governed by the patricians, who monopolized the right to govern Rome. And at some point, the plebs basically said, we're not going to continue to collaborate if we don't have a veto right on these decisions that actually affect us as much as they affect you, the patricians. And the plebs was made of the merchants, the army, so really the essential workers of the entity. And the compromise that was struck was indeed the compromise that the plebs would be able to choose for itself 2 representatives for the plebs, which would be able to veto the decisions of the patricians. And I think we should deepen the governance structure of firms today, because you can actually recognize in the board of the corporation what very much looks like a House of Lords. Yeah. And because the House of Lords was originally made in England by those who owned the lands of England, as today the board members are representing those who own the shares in the corporation. And the question before us is indeed, where is this House of Commons? Where is the representation, the channel for representation of those who invest their labor in the firm, who should be able to ratify collectively the decisions of the firm? What do we do with the profits? Or what is the strategy of the firm? Are we building more plastic toys, or are we switching to more sustainable products? All those questions are questions of relevance for workers, and yet they are out of the possibility to have a say on those questions.
Yes, very clear, Ms. Ferreras. Thank you. So in your book, you draw upon a history of monocameralism, so to speak, as you just mentioned already. You mentioned that a bicameral moment, as you call it, occurs every now and then, especially when the powers that are in charge sense that they will lose this power. I guess that is the analogy you just pointed out with Rome and the Senate over there, because if they don't share that power, they will lose it altogether. Now, in Europe, we already have things which are called, for example, work councils. So how do you distinguish, what is a bicameral firm, just to start with, and how do you distinguish it from, for example, the work council?
I think that actually we can see existing works councils as the prefigurative assembly for that second chamber. Actually, when we read about the history of these works councils in Europe, they were established after World War II as the vehicle for citizenship in the workplace. And if you look at parliamentary debates on these works councils, you will see that some were pushing for these works councils to be first steps toward true citizenship. yet actually they have remained consultative assemblies, which enable workers' representatives elected on union lists to have a conversation with the top management. But they never have reached that level of importance in the corporate structure where they are empowered as the board of the corporation to basically ratify all the decisions or the important decision, the strategy of the firm. And I certainly see those works councils as the building block that actually already exists, even at the European level, and that should be empowered.
So do you believe that we currently live in a bicameral moment, so to speak?
Oh, I certainly think that our societies are in deep rethinking about themselves. It's a deep moment of introspection and of violence for those who are not like me, capable to or able to be in the security of their home and have to go to work and feel anxious about that. So as I totally agree with your the case Buitendijk, who shared with us his column to start this evening, I totally believe that we are only at the beginning of this crisis. And I think that as we are going to move deeper, these questions are going to be more and more to become more and more relevant, and it is going to be I believe a central question of the years to come.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Ferreras. Thank you for all your answers. We're now going to move on to the next interview of tonight.